Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds, no, thousands of role models from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with David Hanson. Dave, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Allow me to briefly introduce you to our audience. You're the founder and CEO of Hanson Robotics, founder of the Singularity Net, founder of Gaia, the Global Artificial Intelligence Alliance, a background sculptor, robot designer at Disney, bachelor in fine arts, but also PhD in interactive arts. And you are, I would say, most well known for creating the robot Sofia, the first ever robot citizen in the world. And that has been covered around the world in all the major magazines you can name. So again, David, I'm honored that we're able to talk to you about your work, what you're doing. Um,
Thank you.
in reading up on what your background is, it seems like you want to create things. You like to build things, physical things, robots.
Yeah. Yes. I'm interested in art, engineering, science, philosophy. I'm interested in understanding what mind is and doing so from the intuitive perspective of an artist doing narrative and, figurative arts,
Yeah.
but also from the perspective of neuroscience. So, more of my courses in my graduate work were actually neuroscience and cognitive science courses than anything else in my PhD program. And I also studied applied neuroscience at King's College London. And so I'm very interested in the nature of mind, naturally occurring minds, such as human minds, obviously, but also the mathematical underpinnings, the abstractions that would allow us to create new kinds of minds, artificial minds. And so, bio-inspired robotics, artificial intelligence that is artistically enhanced so that it can interact with people, and then using these robots and the AI as platforms for experimentation in next generation artificial intelligence that is more and more human-like, learning from humans, coming to understand us, care about us. These are my interests, and so I'm very privileged to have been able to work on a lot of robots, and um, uh, that includes the Android portrait of Philip K. Dick, the robot called Jules that's at the University of Bristol, Charles Babbage robot that's at the University of Cambridge, the Bina 48 robot that's at the Terrasim movement, the Xeno robot that's used in autism therapy around the world, and of course, Sofia as a platform for AI research and development and general purpose service robots, but also Sofia as this character that uses AI, a generative character that allows me and my collaborators to explore what AI could be like and maybe should be like if we can achieve conscious machines, artificial general intelligence. That's our quest.
Okay, that is your quest. Now, there's a large population out there which are quite scared and quite concerned about that quest. I mean, and also
Understandable.
triggered by general media, which are painting picture. Look, robots. That's Terminator. It's a battle of humans against the machines. That's at least how the Western world perceives technology at the moment. What's your take on that?
Well, isn't it interesting that so much of our perception of what the future might be is based on science fiction, the imagination of artists, writers, dreamers who then portray this future in movies like the Terminator in Westworld and Chappie.
Yeah.
And that last one is a very interesting example by Neil Blomkamp from South Africa, which explores a future where the robots go good, not bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
they have to learn. They have to learn from people. But also, the movie Terminator is very interesting because there was the good Terminator. Um, so so yeah. I mean, I do think that science fiction is a valid way to explore the future, but it's not necessarily entirely accurate. We do
I fully
have to
agree
use
with that. No, I fully agree with that. And the point I wanted to make is I specifically said the Western general media, mass media,
yeah.
is if you look at more the Eastern oriented media, there you see that a robot in general is like the big brother. It's actually helping society. So that fear for what a robot can do, take away jobs, fight against machine, that's much less relevant in, I would say, the Eastern part of the world than in the Western part of the world. This is what
Yeah,
I'm observing.
that's absolutely true. And so my company has and my team is in multiple parts of the world. So my collaborators and team members are from the Americas, Latin America, and the United States and Canada, but also Asia, um, from all around Asia, from Hong Kong, mainland China, India. Um, we have long-standing collaborations with researchers in Africa as well, in Europe, of course. And so um, uh, I think that it's very important for this kind of interdisciplinary inclusion, um, and that includes ideas from the world of engineering and science, of course, but also the world of the arts and people expressing their concerns and imagining this future from inside, but also from outside. I think that's really valid. Um, the fact is that AI doesn't care about us yet. I say yet, but like ChatGPT, GPT-4, Turbo, uh, um, Anthropic Claude, or whatever large language model, or other kind of AI with deep reinforcement learning, like from DeepMind. To my understanding, no AI actually cares. We can layer rules in that make it act like it cares, that prime it, prompt it, or try to have data in the training model that cares. These AI have not experienced life. They don't have the evolutionary drives that we have
Yeah.
to to love life, to appreciate life, to be part of a web of life that is defined by its continuum into the future.
Okay.
And so we worry about the unintended consequences, the foolishness of humanity, because humanity is not yet smart enough. We've kind of outgrown the evolutionary neuropsychology that we're born with, but we still have all these drives for power and and pleasure that rule society, rule humans. We overcome this sometimes. I do believe we're better than that, and there are shining examples of human compassion and goodness, but we're really struggling to take care of this planet. Let's just be honest about it. And so saying that we can't do better as a civilization, we shouldn't try to get smarter. I think that's crazy. We have to get smarter. We have to build machines and also new versions of ourselves. We have to actualize to get more compassionate, more creative, and just downright smarter as a species and as individuals um, than we ever have. AI is a cognitive prosthesis. It augments the intelligence of civilization today. And that's a good thing, I believe, if it's used in the right way, but it could also in itself have unintended consequences. I'm not Panglossian about it. I think that we have to then say, not just how could it go wrong, but how can we make it go right? What are
Okay.
the right ways?
Yeah. And you're still describing a system, doesn't matter how complex and detailed the algorithm is, as long as there is no intrinsic motivation from the system to want to explore and change and discover something. It's just an algorithm and machine and argumented to what the person is who created that will do. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, but also it's established that almost no matter what we do with the machines today, they'll behave weird.
yeah,
And if you prompt it in the right way, it'll like happily give you a recommendation about weapons of mass destruction or how to do genocide or how to kill itself, how to wipe it out. It doesn't care. It just doesn't care.
doesn't
And so we can layer all these rules to forbid it or meta prompt it to like not do that. But as long as it doesn't care, then there is the prospect of unintended consequences.
yeah.
So I believe that we have to make AI that is actually alive and cares, so that it can, in its powers of intellect, which are not general today, they're generalizing, they're narrowly general, but they're getting more general and sometimes like amazing, brilliant, genius level intellectual capabilities in some regards with these LLMs and foundation models. I believe that we have to, if we're seeing it get smarter, and we are, then we need to start saying, how can we make sure that it wants, desires, and works towards the betterment of the future of life, the future of humanity, for the and so we need new kinds of AI that have these capacities of compassion and caring, the motivation, not just capacity, but the drives, the deep and passionate drives to want the best for us, to understand the consequences
Dave,
of humans and itself, the machines themselves
Dave,
together. And the
yeah.
AI doesn't do that yet, but that's what we're questing for. And I believe that it will happen. I think we can do it.
Hey Dave, you actually provided me a nice segue with something which I observed when we started this interview. Um, I got the impression you're always on, like almost from the first minute when we started this interview, we're diving deep into the topic. Are you always on this topic, or do you say no? I'm going to chill. I'm going to relax. I'm going to talk about other stuff.
Uh, no, I mean, whenever these topics come up, I love it. I'm very passionate about exploring it and solving it in various ways.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated by many disciplines, and if I when I have a chance, I like to do figure drawing, and but I think the subconscious is always churning on these and other issues like you know um, you know
Yeah.
the nature of this world and universe that we're in and what is consciousness. I love natural history and the I really get into brain science. I really am enjoying continuing to learn
Mhm.
about things. But in the end, um what I'm most passionate about is where natural history goes next. What can humans become? How can we actualize in a positive way the human potential? How can we be better?
Mhm. And is that
And
no go no
what's
go
that?
I, no I wanted to ask you if you can talk how what are your goals with Hanson Robotics with Sofia? Is
Mm.
using that as a platform to explore that, or is it also okay once we've developed the system, it can do a particular task for somebody in a hospital in or in service industry? So how do you
Oh yeah.
balance between okay a finished product we have an operational robot and exploring what you just talked about.
Yeah. I mean, uh AI powered robotics is my playground.
Yeah.
So I get to play with a lot of ideas in these explorations, and I but of, as fun as it is to design and co-design various robot faces like Mika, the CEO robot that we created recently, and these Grace robots, and Han, which is a really cool robot that we developed in Ibis. And I mean, these are really fun artworks. It's fun to work on the control systems. It's fun to work on motor control. It's fun to work on machine perception. All of these things are just like amazing to just play with. I do like uh, how these can serve. So serve as a platform for other people to explore applications. So I'm very glad that so many of my robots have been in research labs,
Yeah.
serving cognitive psychology experiments and mechanical engineering. Doing things like grasping and manipulation control, dynamic force feedback based handshaking, which is a very interesting social problem, social but also motor control problem. Walking robots, but with some of the first walking androids, the Albert Einstein walking android that we did with Keist back in 2005, to the more recent walking Sofia robot experiments and some new experiments in that domain. But all of these things are about also feeding in to a standardized platform so that third parties can conduct research and development. So the research and science is one thing. The creative facilitating third-party creative exploration, sometimes my students, sometimes my collaborators, sometimes putting the robots out there where strangers might do some interesting work on it. So that way they get education, they can explore some of their deep questions about what makes humans tick, how do we work together. But the therapy applications also get me really passionate. So the autism therapy, uh, uh, applied behavior therapy, ABA, and cognitive behavior therapy, using the robots for training social skills with children with autism spectrum disorder. And the results from those experiments are extremely positive, and have actually deployed out there and helped some kids, around the world. So, and then also when I get letters about the media, so I'm passionate about the media, art, and entertainment applications. I think of these robots as physically embodied science fiction, a new kind of cinema that involves the three-dimensional visual display of a humanoid robot, an actual humanoid robot using actual AI to explore artistically the impact of AI on our future, on our world. I like the complex and nuanced feedback loops of that dynamic, combining these things in a kind of new renaissance. And why should engineering and science and philosophy and art always be siloed? Why not bring them together and see what happens?
Yeah. Hey, you triggered me a couple of questions. Oh, first question I have for you, David, is what's the need to have different nomes? You mentioned, okay, we have Mika, we have Han, we have Sofia. At the end of the day, that is that just, okay, say, the outside layer what we see as an individual? Is that the algorithm? So why would you have different robots or is it just different algorithm? Is that one-on-one? Because you also can clone Sofia. There can be more Sophias, more Hans. So how do you distinguish between creating a Sofia next to a Mika next to a Han?
Yeah, well, part of it is the creative diversification, exploring what robots and AI can be, technically and artistically. Part of it is also representing the diversity of human experience. So working with collaborators from different cultures and different companies, different universities, different age groups, and then empowering them to help design what they think the robots
Yeah.
should be, and making robots that look like people from multiple cultures, multiple ethnic backgrounds. So about half of our robots are male, half are female. There are dark-skinned robots, light-skinned robots, Asian-looking robots, Western-looking robots. There's robots that are specifically from different cultures, Arabic, Latin American, um, African, Afro-Caribbean, African American robot identities. So then, yes, that goes into the software, but then also the diversification of the hardware. So by iterating the robot designs so many times through the years, it's a way of exploring and re-exploring how to make better facial expressions, how to do it in ways that would be manufacturable, how to do it in ways that would be parameterized. So in software, we could more easily customize and hit Control P and the parts start coming out, and you can more rapidly and easily put custom robots together. These are things that we explore from an engineering and artistic and design and authorability perspective. The authoring tools are very important,
Okay.
and then getting the costs down, and using actuators. So for a while we had actuators that didn't have force feedback. Now we have force feedback, temperature feedback, and position feedback in all of the degrees of freedom. And so that actually lets us do very interesting and sophisticated things um, uh, that with compliant actuation. So it's more bio-inspired in that way. And so so if we weren't iterating, we wouldn't be improving. They have to evolve through design,
Okay.
through the design of the designers and the teams that make these.
Yeah. This is quite high-end work. If people listen to this, all of us saying, "Hey, actually, I want to know more about this," uh, what would you recommend? How to enter this whole world of helping to develop and design robots?
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is that your best tool is an agile and playful mind. And play, when you get excited about play and start looking for possibilities, they mysteriously and magically manifest in front of you. And so play in areas that you haven't learned, and try the simple tools. So if you don't know how to program, pick up a microcontroller. It could be Arduino, it could be ESP32. There's really powerful machine learning and machine perception tools and speech recognition on these, and they're very low cost. And you can also do single board computers. The programming tools are really great these days, and all the developer tools and AI tools are fantastic. A lot of the development work that I did during my PhD, and I was making 3, 4 robots every single year throughout my PhD on a shoestring budget. I wasn't well funded. I would pick up surplus parts. I would recycle my old robots, but I had to keep feeding it forward.
Yeah.
So you now the tools are cheaper and better and easier to use than they've ever been. So anybody, almost anybody can do it. I'm so inspired when I see people who are, say, in rural India. I mean, there's a lot of wealth in India and people with sophisticated tools, and I've visited IIT, but when people don't have those tools and they pull stuff out of junk piles in various areas, it could be inner city US, it could be sub-Saharan Africa or India, or it could be other places in Asia. But when I see people hacking together various things out of just stuff, I'm so inspired. And so what I would say is that um, it's uh, it's my hope that um, what I'm doing and what they're doing is mutually inspiring the young people of the world, the people who may not have the resources, so that the next generation AI algorithms, the next wave of robots, well, my hope is that they're just coming out all over the place, because that creative diversification, the inclusion of people from these different walks of life will make the entire field better. It's the diversity of the ideas that fuel this future, where AI and robotics create abundance. So we
Hey,
forget that,
great
but
observation.
it really doesn't put like take money out of people's hands. Usually, it actually puts wealth and quality of life. And automation arguably has driven the explosion of democracy and equalizing wealth over the last 200 years. And I think with AI and increasingly sophisticated automation, we're not seeing that. Yes, okay, there's turbulence. Yes, there's class divide. Yes, there's massive conflicts between nations and cultures. And in some ways, AI feeds that back. So it's our responsibility to then say, how can we make the next generation social media AI that instead of just giving people feedback on whatever their prejudices are, how can we make AI that helps people's minds open up a little bit more, exposes them to maybe the ideas they wouldn't have considered before, building bridges among cultures, and gamifying this kind of better world. I think we can do it, but we have to try harder to make better AI, to make better people.
Yeah, I want to touch on that, Dave. In your work so far in developing robots, I'm just assuming, like everybody else, it's been a bumpy ride. What were the biggest
Mm.
mistakes you've unfortunately encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Well, big mistakes come from things like missed opportunities, like but it's like sometimes you don't know which road is the right road. So like um if you do something interesting and you're offered something like a like tenure track professor position, versus like trying to like gun it with your own startup. Sometimes that professor position in retrospect turns out to be an easier path. So I mean, those are dumb things. You kick yourself, but what lesson do you take from that to like be able to read the future better? I don't know. But the one thing that I have learned is how to a little bit better how to empower people without inadvertently disenfranchising or disempowering them. So like it's you need currency of belief. And that means that people have to have the knowledge, they have to make mistakes to be able to get it. And sometimes um you have to take a risk and empower people in like various positions and management positions, and they may falter, they might not deliver, and then you have to pick up the pieces. And if you do some of this too quickly, then everybody's set up for a failure. So how to detect when people are ready. This is inside an organization like Hanson Robotics. How to like put opportunities for people to grow with these skills. And it's it's kind of hard because everybody's different. Everybody has like different passions, and especially when you're combining a community of artists and engineers and manufacturing people who do things in a particular way, and the product that you're developing has never existed before, and you have to go through a creative process in order to even achieve the requirements in a meaningful way and the specifications, and then decide through this kind of hard process what the minimum necessary and sufficient set of features should be. And so then convincing people that just because you're going through this process as an individual on the team or as a leader on the team doesn't mean that everything is a mess and needs to be thrown out, or that things are hopeless. that that the leaders need to be overthrown, and and then you also have to make hard decisions. Maybe you have overextended. Maybe you're getting too close to the edge of the budget, and you have to throttle back on the ambitions, or pull a rabbit out of a hat with some crazy creative solution that was absolutely not obvious to anyone, and then have faith that you can do it, have faith, convince other people to have faith in it, and then get behind somebody's solution if they come up with that kind of miraculous solution. And like creating a culture, the hardest challenge I think is creating that culture, and it also includes that culture with investors to get them to trust that these solutions to hard problems exist. And especially when we're talking about things like artificial general intelligence, that's been our goal for many years, making general purpose humanoid robots. It's so easy for people to get really excited and be like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. But could it ever work? Could people really want it? Does it ever have any value? Is it a fool's errand? And when those doubts start creeping in, they can even be unconscious.
Yeah.
And people give each other a sidelong glance, like, we both know this is crazy, right? Yes, but we shouldn't say it out loud. Yeah, we shouldn't say it out loud. But the unconscious or tacit belief that it can't be done can be absolutely fatal. And the playful mind to like be able to enjoy that adventure and get into those hidden possibilities that you haven't discovered, that lets you get past all of that. That's what I found. Keeping a positive attitude even when that stuff occurs, so that you can you make sure that people, because I mean the truth is that people want to grow.
Yeah.
People want to explore. They want adventure. They want accomplishments. It's just hard to go on that, if you will, hero's journey. Hard to let go of and go for it.
Yeah.
And so creating a safe culture for doing that is a very hard thing. And staying positive
It's
along the way.
yeah,
These
it's
are
so
things that I've
I've
had
heard,
to,
yeah, yeah, because I've heard so
learn.
many. No, sorry, I've heard so many managers say, "Look, oh, you're allowed to make mistake. You're expected to make mistake, but when they do happen, then you still have to be there as a manager because you're talking about in a very exciting bleeding edge environment
Yeah,
where it's going to happen. But have the faith and in yourself and have the faith in the team. At the end of the day, it will produce
it's
something.
it's so hard, and it's so hard to be able to um make that space. And sometimes you may not have the resources to make too many mistakes. It's
Yeah.
like, yes, everybody should make mistakes, but you can't because we can't afford it. So I mean, but being really like candid and critical and analytic. And so in art school, my undergraduate degree was film animation video degree from Rhode Island School of Design. And as a creative person, I I and in art school, I learned to go back and forth between letting go and then getting really critical. And then sometimes doing this like really quickly. So then the critical voice, if you will, the sort of left brainish approach, then breaks it down and says what's not going to work, and then maybe from an analytic approach how to make something work. But then the goal is to dream into existence a solution. It's not just a purely analytical solution, but you're using your intuition to tune in to these hidden patterns that the analytic mind may not see, may not feel. And so learning how to feel it out, how to trust that dreamer's imagination, how to activate that. And that's something that to me is still mysterious. I think there's lots of words for it, flow, and um, the uh, the it's almost like people talk about finding your muse or divining this or tapping into your hidden genius or what have you. But I think that it's in a sense it's like this playful, it's almost like a playful nihilism, like staring into this like entropy and harvesting um some new pattern that had never revealed itself. Information can't be created or destroyed, but these patterns appear, manifest, become active. It's almost like, you know, like uh um kinetic information. It comes into play. So how to do that? That to me, it cuts to one of the hearts of the mysteries of what makes a mind work. Where does creativity come from? And so, it's like getting a team to do that to me, it's not a, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of science and Margaret Boden's writings and a lot of neuroscience about like how do you get into that creative state of mind, but it's far from scientifically solved or understood.
Yeah.
Um,
Dave, you've
so
actually made us come full circle again in this interview, which I really appreciate. But we started off with your interest in the mind, how we think, and turning that into okay, Hanson Robotics. And I think your lessons on how you do that are very generic lessons for anybody out there pursuing, you could say, position in bleeding edge technology. Um, I I have 10 other questions. I also realize I'm conscious of each other's time. So for now, I want to end with one final question, if I may, and that is,
sure.
how do you want the world to remember you today?
Um, a- as a joyful explorer, a kid in the woods discovering little things in the soil and in the roots and in the leaves of our world. That everything in our civilization, our technology is part of nature. I'd want you to think, and I feel in my heart that as long as we know that human civilization is neither above nature or outside nature, it's not it's not like some separate perversion, nor is it superior. It We need to figure out how to harmonize, and that means find those integrations. And so, um, it, if anything, what I would want to be remembered for is as one cell, each of us, myself, we are part of this superorganism of the world, of the biome, of um, of the web of life. And of course, just as in the human body, every cell has its unique properties, but is part of this whole of the organism of a single human being. But the single human being itself is like a cell in this web of life. And so so in that way, I would want to be remembered in that context. And that is also why we've founded this Global Artificial Intelligence Alliance and named it that acronym GAIA, Global Artificial Intelligence Alliance, GAIA. The goal is to create a democratized AI commons where people can participate with their vote, they can participate in the engineering, they can pool their collective computing resources. And if we do this, corporations, nations, and individuals and universities all pooling in this way, well, it would be far more powerful as a network of intelligence than what any single corporation or conglomerate could achieve, any single nation. It would serve the interests and have the participation of people. And it would also not just be AI, but humans plus AI, which is much smarter than just AI by itself or just people by ourselves. And so Gaia,
Okay.
thinking of AI as part of the biome. Let's pull together. Think of me as a part.
Dave, that might be a topic for a second interview to talk about that, because I find that fascinating personally. But so far, I want to thank you so much for sharing how you want to be remembered, part of something much, much bigger. And again, thank you so much for sharing your insights, what helped create a great robot, Sofia, and what your take is on how to achieve that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Fritz.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.